All right. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Tuesday Night Live. This one, I'm joined by Matt LeGrand. He is a YouTuber. He's a triathlete, and I'm really, really excited to have him on the show tonight. If you guys haven't seen his channel, do yourself a favor and go click over there because he puts some amazing YouTube videos out. I really, really love his style, and I'm excited to have him on the show tonight. Just wanted to give a couple shout outs to some people that are here. Platts 33 is in the house. What's up, man? Liam McNeil is here. Jude Collins is here. Aaron Townsend is here. And Dave from Chase the Summits on here. Stoked on this one. You guys are awesome. So thanks everyone for joining. If you have questions about running, about triathlon, about YouTube, about making videos, anything, drop them in the chat and Matt and I will answer them. Yeah, like I said, I'm really excited about this one. We're just going to get the intro video rolling, let a few more people show up, and then I'm going to be back on with Matt here in just a second. Let's go. All right, we're back, and there he is, Matt himself. How you doing, Matt? Why can't I hear you? Hold on a second. It's not that. Say something again. Shoot, I don't know what's going on. We just tested this like 5 seconds ago, and it was working. It says he's in the green room, but he's definitely not. He's here. So sorry everyone, technical difficulties. We're gonna figure this out here in just a second. Matt, go ahead and call me back. Yeah, in the meantime, I'm just gonna send him a text real quick. Here he is. He's calling back. Let's see. Let's hope this works this time. Let's see here. Place him in here. Can we hear you now? Oh my gosh, what is going on, everybody? All right, we're gonna try and figure this out here. Check. Hey, just keep talking, see if we can hear you. Oh, this is too bad, everybody. Shoot, we were literally just talking about like 5 seconds ago. Man, it says I'm gonna remove. There we go. Yes. Okay, you're back now. You're back.
No problem. I think
technical difficulties, everybody.
Yeah.
Well, now that everyone's been able to see your face but not hear you, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and say like what you do, like where you're from, and just introduce yourself to the people on my channel.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show. For sure. This is amazing. My name's Matt LeGrand, and I am a triathlete. And started a YouTube channel about 2.5 years ago, and just have really been enjoying making videos. On the day side of things, day job is software development, and I have 3 kids, which keeps me pretty busy. And yeah, so that, and I also coach a local cross-country team, and do some other kind of volunteer type stuff for like trying to get triathlon kind of local stuff going. So yeah, it's a super fun. Yeah, the whole point is like try to promote our sport if possible. Hope that our sport doesn't like dwindle to nothing, and encourage more people to at least try it and see if it's something they're interested in.
Yeah, that's interesting. So like this year has been obviously so crazy. Have you done any races this year or anything like that? Or no?
Last year I had a bike crash, and I don't know if you can see my shoulder has a bit of a deformity, and that's always going to be the case. Oh, wow. And so the plan was to like take it easy this year, and I was going to do a couple of races. And so I can still swim and run and bike and everything like that. So that's fantastic. But I was kind of planning on having a down year. And so when all the races were canceled, I did feel bad for my friends that have spent, like hundreds and thousands of dollars on race entry fees, and they're not getting to do these races. But like, behind their backs, I'm like, thank God I didn't, spend a whole bunch of money on race entry fees, because, it's not really happening this year. And then it looks like, at least for the spring, at least all these races are getting canceled. So,
yeah, it seems to be the case. I believe so. Everyone in the chat, I believe you can hear Matt now. If you can, give me a thumbs up or something in the chat just so I can confirm that, because I can hear him, and I just want to make sure that we don't go any farther without not being able to hear him. But yeah, were you tell me about how you got started into endurance sports. Like in high school, were you a runner or cross country, anything like that?
So right in middle school, I started, it was one of those things where like all my friends started track. So what do? You join track, right? And then literally the next year after that, everyone just thought it was uncool to be on the track team. And so everyone quit. But I had already kind of gotten into it a little bit. Like I wasn't good or anything like that. I was, definitely one of the worst runners on the team, but I liked the sport, didn't care if it wasn't cool. And so I kept with it. And, basically if you know me, you'll know I'm not like the most talented individual, but you work hard at stuff, you get better. And I think by my sophomore year of high school, I had won a state championship, and then I won a couple more before I graduated high school. And that was in Alabama. So this is not, it's not Indiana, right? Where
well, you just said you weren't the most talented, but then you won a state championship. I think you have to explain that. What do you mean by that?
Well, I would say that I worked hard.
Yeah.
So I was a high mileage guy, very high volume, to see very minimal results. Right. So, I think when you talk about PRs and things like that, it sounds fast, but when I think if you talk to anyone that really knows collegiate running, you'll be like, yeah, he was a, mid to backpack, at the, I made it to the NCAA championships, but I was in the very back of the NCAA championship, which is still one of the proudest athletic achievements of my life. Right. So I'm still proud of it. It's just that I wasn't, I was on no one's radar. No one was worried about me on the starting line. But you get to race all of the top runners in the world there. I remember one time racing some guys from Arkansas, and I raced a guy named Daniel Lincoln, who was a steeplechase American record holder, and then multiple. I think he went to the Olympics once, and then another guy named Alistair Cragg, who was an Olympian for Ireland. And so you're and I was lined up on the starting line in between those two guys. It was these are the best runners in the world, and then there's me, right? The guy that works hard, who's going to get lapped and pulled off the track, but still there, And so I'm both proud and embarrassed about some of those performances. I guess that's how it goes.
No, but I think that's awesome because, I mean, most people can probably relate to that because you can work hard. Everyone can work hard, but a lot of I really identify with that because I was kind of the same way. In high school, was never the most talented, but definitely worked hard, and so that's awesome. Do you have a coach now, or have you ever had a coach for triathlon?
Well, obviously high school and college, I had a coach, and I haven't really had a coach since. And I think I think if you've done sports growing up, you do get a feel for, the workload that's involved and what you need to do and how you can progress to where you want to be at a pinnacle race, for example. So if you've done that your whole life, you have a good feel for it. That being said, I do think that there's some other parts of having a coach that are way more beneficial than just, a training plan, right? Where there's that feedback and having someone that's not you kind of give you a real decent perspective on your training. So, I'm definitely missing that part of the puzzle. And I've definitely considered of a couple of different coaches that I, think would be really fantastic. But I want to be healthy, and there was a time where I was like, oh, I want to qualify for Kona. And I think having a coach is going to be the right way to go about it. And it was just a matter of kind of getting the timing right. So we'll see, maybe someday in the future.
Awesome.
But not now. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned qualifying for Kona. And so for people that are into triathlon, like you say that and it's just like, they know what that means. But for someone that doesn't know what that means, how would you describe that? What does that mean?
I'd say like your running group is more focused on the sport of running, but it's, in some ways you kind of think of it as like qualifying for like Boston or something like that. It is that kind of like pinnacle of the sport. I think it's more, a bit more difficult than something like qualifying for Boston. You basically need to kind of be in the top 3 in your age group at one of the Ironman events in the world. And so that's not exactly true. There are, different spots, but that's kind of a rough guess at where you need to be. There are like, people can turn down their spots and you can have these roll down spots. There's all this, stuff that goes along with it. But definitely I would say that the top age groupers, the top professional triathletes in the world, they all kind of focus on that one race of Kona. It's kind of the pinnacle of the sport for sure. And I wish it wasn't the case because, it'd be nice if there was a bit more of variety, right? Like ultra running has a bit more variety. I definitely think that marathoning, you have like the, big major marathons, but you don't necessarily have like one specific marathon, unless you're maybe talking about the Olympics. But that's not really open to everyone, right? So,
right. Yeah. And I think like in triathlon, it's so, just for people watching, it's so based on your age group. Like that's really the only people you're competing against, unless you're at the tip of the spear and you're leading the race. Like then that's different. But for most people, you're competing against just those in your age group. And so, when I did Ironman Louisville, like it was like I knew I didn't have a chance of qualifying for Kona just based off of people's times that were going to be there. And then in that age group, the 30 to 35 age group, there was only the top 2 guys went and the top 2 girls.
Right.
And I think I was like 20th or something, like in that age group. So, and I was off by a couple hours, like, and so it's similar to running or ultra running, but it's almost like, I agree with you, it's almost like harder to qualify for Kona than Boston, because Boston, you're just shooting for a time. And as long as you get in that time, like, in there, but like when you're running or when you're racing an Ironman, like you have to almost win the thing to qualify for Kona. And it's crazy hard.
Yeah. And when I compare it to Boston, I don't want to belittle like anyone's qualifying for Boston or anything like that. I think we all have our own struggles. And for me, having the running background means that qualifying for, Boston or races like that isn't the same level of difficulty. And having to like learn swimming and learn biking and things like that, like triathlon has been a little bit more difficult, I would say. So, if your goal is to qualify for Boston, like that's amazing. I still am amazed by that. My wife just qualified for Boston for the first time this past year when they had it canceled. We had like this nice trip planned. I was really excited about going. But yeah, and maybe we'll do it at some other time, a couple years from now or something like that. But it makes no sense to have 50,000 people from all over the world like descend on one location. Like that sounds more ludicrous now than like it ever has before. Like we never thought twice about it, but now it's like, why would you do something like that?
Yeah. And how many people run? How many people are in the Boston Marathon?
It's I don't know. I don't really keep track of stuff like that anymore, but it was like 40,000. I'm sure it's grown.
And then when you talk about families and friends and everything, it's just like tons of people.
And then it's people from all over the world, right? It's like everyone's flying into Boston.
Yeah.
It seems silly at this point to think of stuff like that, but that's major marathons. So,
yeah. So what's been your progression kind of like moving up in the distances? Where did you start in triathlon and where are you now?
Oh, I was pretty horrible at triathlon when I started. Like I said, I had a running background, and I would run a lot, but I've been dealing with Achilles injuries since college, which is, we're coming up on 20 years of Achilles injuries. And so a doctor was finally like, hey, stop running for 3 months, see if it gets better. And I was like, okay, but I'm gonna swim and bike. Like, I'm gonna go grab a bike. I bought like the first one I found on Craigslist, was the complete wrong size, whatever, and I went to the pool, and I asked the lifeguard on duty, like, how far is this pool? Is this an Olympic sized pool? They said, yes. Okay. I know that's like that's a 50-meter pool. I was like, I started to calculate like how far it is to a mile. I swam what I thought was a mile. And it turns out that, and so then my time was something like 22 minutes, or, I don't know, it was something like that. And I went home and I looked it up to see if that was fast, right? Because this is what you do, right? I'm like, I'm a pretty good swimmer. I swam, in a lake growing up, and I've got this running background, I'm sure my miles. And everyone was like, I've swam, twice a day for, 5 years. And in my mile time's like right in that 22-minute, or I don't know if it was 22 minutes, but it was something like that. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm really good. And then it was like, you figure out like, oh, that was a half a mile. And so it's like this like huge letdown, like, dang it. Like, I'm not very good at swimming. But those are things that, I just worked hard at. I did my first triathlon, and people are funny. Like, I think any of you guys that run, if you ever want to try triathlon, everyone's going to automatically think that you're fast. You may run like, I think in my first 5K, I ran like a 20-minute 5K or something like that after biking, swimming and biking. And people were like, oh my gosh, this is so fast. And I'm like, this is the worst 5K of my life. But and your legs feel horrible. But I kind of had this thought process of like, okay, do some sprint triathlons, try to do an Olympic triathlon, like build up to that. And I did that in the first year of triathlon. And then the next year I had a whole group of friends that were training for an Ironman. And I thought that's too much to kind of take on. And so in my second year, I did a half Ironman distance. And then the third year of triathlon, I did a full distance, which I thought was a really nice progression. And that's usually when people ask me, like, how do I, the question is always like, how do I do an Ironman?
Yeah.
I sit and watch TV all the time, but like, I want to do the Ironman, like, and no one wants to hear like, take 3 years and build up to it. But that's usually what I recommend for people to consider, just because like, it's such a nice progression, and you have time to like slowly accumulate all the junk that you need for the sport. And it's a big time investment too. So I think that's a way, one option. That's the way that I did it, and it seemed to make sense for me. I had a nice group to train with, and there's a fairly large amount of time to adapt to long bike rides. It's interesting because, doing a marathon, like 2.5 hour marathon, right? It's like, seems like forever. And then you go for a bike ride and it's like, oh, you can do a 3-4 hour bike ride, and your body has to get used to doing that kind of endurance. It's different than running, right? So I think ultra running might kind of play into that a little bit, where it's like ultra runners get their body used to it. And it's like nutrition and just, being able to kind of handle the amount of physical energy that you're going to need for that amount of time. So it's interesting. Ultra running and triathlon have a lot in common, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And like, I started and did a couple years of sprints and Olympics, and then kind of had the same progression as you. 1 year did a half Ironman, and then the next year did my first Ironman. And the Ironman training though is just insane. And I think if people that haven't done an Ironman or haven't trained for an Ironman, or maybe not trained properly for an Ironman, I guess I should say, it's completely like out of this world compared to like just, even like training for 100-mile runs, like you can't run that much, right. But training for an Ironman, like swimming multiple times a week, biking hundreds of miles a week. Every weekend, like in the last 2 months leading up to the race, like going on like 7-8 hour bike rides, like just to get the miles in. And then you're talking about running on top of that. It's so much training. How do you like manage that? Is there like, I guess my question would be, do you kind of like approach it in a way where you're trying to be competitive, or are you approaching it in a way where it's just like, if the training fits in, it fits in? But like, how do you approach your training?
So I am probably like you, is where I will write down every workout, really for the entire, I mean, there's ways to adjust stuff, but at least one key workout per week is pretty much, it's not written in stone. It can be flipped around, weather dependent or anything really. But I always kind of start with the end in mind, where it's like, here's the race. Here are family vacation stuff that I can't switch around. I can't mix up like those days. And then you can work your training programs into that. But yeah, it's a lot of work for sure. And I think that's one of the reasons that I really kind of got hooked on the sport is, I tell people, like, it was very nostalgic for how I trained in college, right? Where it was like, we're doing 2 training sessions per day, and, just having that amount of training volume so that, it's a couple hours a day there. And then for me, it was Saturdays were very long and Sundays were pretty long as well. So I would do, a longer run, a medium bike and a long run, really not, I'd say like even like a normal bike and a long run on Sundays. And then the Saturdays were like a bit more extreme, where you would swim an hour and then go bike for 5 or 6 hours and then do a little bit of a run afterwards. Those days are long, but I didn't do a million of those days. You do those kind of big days as you're getting towards the end of an Ironman block. So I liked the training. I love that. It's, the scheduling is hard.
Yeah. And
having, young kids, right, is just really hard, because your wife feels like she's, doing everything by herself. And I think that's just hard. And it's not just the training, right? Because you've got, getting ready for stuff, got to get your bike prepped, and you've got to, travel to some races, and sometimes you're bringing your family to races, but then you're going to neglect them at a race because you've got all kinds of packet pickups and get your gear ready. And similar to ultras, you have, these like drop bags or whatever. It's slightly different, but the transition bags and all this stuff that you would have for triathlon. So it's a lot of things to comprehend. And one of the reasons that I started the channel is because there's so much information to take in. How do you get that out to people in a way that's entertaining and fun, and in a way that they're going to want to consider the sport and not feel super intimidated, right? So probably a lot of the reasons, like, you started a channel, you see other people doing this and doing a great job with their channels. Like, I would like think in ultra, I'm thinking like Ginger Runner is like a great channel. But like people that are making great films, making it entertaining, but still educational, right? Like, I think that that's the sweet spot for this stuff. Yeah,
for sure. So what does a typical week look like for you as you're training? I mean, you can just, because I think like a lot of people on my channel, it's probably just like run.
I love running.
But
Running's my favorite. Yeah.
Well, like what does a week of training look like for you?
Well, right now it's really unstructured because I don't have any races. I'm doing this challenge right now, and it's 100 days of biking in a row and an hour minimum. And so I think I'm on like day 98 or something like that. Thanksgiving is the last day.
Yeah.
And I already got my bike ride in today. So there's a lot of Zwifting. It's like super boring stuff. Yeah. Zwifting is like this program where you can get on a bike trainer and you can kind of be in this video game. Like there's a little avatar and stuff like that. So it's not as much fun as like going and running trails. But I'm also swimming and then really just running a very small amount because my Achilles is, again, it's causing a lot of problems at the moment. And so I'm not really running a ton or not nearly as much as I would want to. So right now I'm running about twice a week, and I'm swimming about 3 times a week, and I'm biking every day. So it
Yeah.
was only 12 hours last week, which, well, 12 and a half or something like that, which I think is a very reasonable amount. I think when you get into Ironman training, like the thick of it, you'll go over, some people may go over 20, or I might hit 30, but it all depends on like how much volume you can take, because you're trained for an Ironman, you really do want to kind of maximize the amount of aerobic capacity that you can develop for that distance, because it's not a speed event as much as some of the other stuff. And I think I listened to one of your videos recently where you were talking about like having some of the faster kind of top end VO2 max stuff happen earlier in the season. And I have always kind of followed that similar pattern of doing some races, 5K, 10K kind of distances, sprint, Olympic distances in the build up for an Ironman race. And then I usually have a real big block of time dedicated to the Ironman training, where you do that real thick buildup of endurance work.
Yeah, for sure. And you talk about like just how much training is involved. I mean, I don't like 20 to 30 hours. Like if I was out running trails 20 to 30 hours, like that would be insane, like per week. I mean, first of all, like the body probably couldn't even take that unless, I mean, maybe if I was, professional and had my own physical therapist and own massage therapist and everything just like paid at the house, But with triathlon, it's a lot different because when you're swimming, that's not beating up your body so bad. I mean, it's really hard on your shoulders if you don't have proper form. And then the biking, like you can just, I mean, you can get 2 or 3 hour bike ride and it's like nothing. I mean, you can go to work after, if you did 2 or 3 hour run, you'd be hurting. But yeah, you mentioned Zwift, and that was something like I actually really loved Zwift when I was training for triathlons, because it was just like it was so much more fun than just watching Netflix movies. And that's one thing, like I had a decently bad crash leading up to, it was, I don't even remember what year it was, but it was actually like 1 week before my first child was born. So it kind of like messed me up in the head a little bit. And then ever since then, I primarily trained on my trainer indoors, and then would do like long rides outside, because you can't match that. But but Zwift was
I've done
a good
100-mile rides indoors.
Hours.
It's not fun, but you can do it. And I've kind of been in the same boat as you, where it's like you have bad crashes, and if you have kids, it's there's a very different feel to any of these crashes where you're like, this is not worth it at all. For me, it's always been like, I love running. Like I'm never going to try, Achilles injuries, all the issues that I've had, like I'm never going to quit trying to run. But I could give up biking or swimming. I think I like those sports. They're a lot of fun, but the fear of crashing and the reality of traffic the way it is, it's real, right? It's a real danger.
Yeah. My crash, I think I've told this story on this channel before, but it involved a hawk. Like a hawk was like, it like swooped down across the road, and then it started flying like right next to me, and it like whizzed past me like just a couple feet, and I kind of like followed it with my head, and as soon as I did that, my front wheel just went right past the line and into the dirt, and I flipped. Cracked the back of my helmet, like cracked in half. So apparently I hit the back of my head really hard. And then my bike was all bent up, like the handlebars were facing down and everything, and like some truck drove by like 5 minutes later and gave me a ride home. But yeah, ever since then, like I was just like, man. And I had a couple run-ins with some drivers that didn't appreciate me riding a bike on the road, and I think pretty much go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I don't see that as much from runners. Like I did have cars that hated me when I would run like in the road and stuff like that, but like I never cared. Whereas biking, I'm really scared of getting, just hit by a car that doesn't, just because they don't like you.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, I've had cars like floor it by me honking and then like cut in front of me. And it's just like,
Yeah.
What's the point of that? Like, I mean, I've had that once or twice while I'm running, but much more often while biking. And it's just like, it just doesn't make sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if it's because I grew up running. I would go run right in the middle of traffic, like give me, any location. And I was just not scared at all. Whereas I'm really scared biking all the time. I have like this little like radar on the back of this bike. It's like probably that one little thing that's dipping down under here somewhere.
Is it the Garmin one that shows up on your head unit? Yeah.
Yep. And it's great. So if you guys are into cycling and you don't have something like that, check it out. Yeah. It's definitely worth considering. It will tell you when traffic is coming behind you, and it'll tell you how many cars are coming. It's an awesome thing. Worthwhile tool for sure.
Yeah. I don't remember which head unit I have. Maybe the like 810 or something like that. And it shows like little dots coming up the side of the screen for each car that's behind you. It's so awesome.
Yeah. But I really like riding without it. Yep.
Yeah. A couple questions from people in the chat. Ronald Winkler, this says, what does Matt think about MAF training? MAF. Do you know what that is?
Acetone training, right? So I think it's extremely valuable for a lot of reasons. So I think that there's a fair amount of science back there that works, but I think from just like a normal perspective, like if you think about slowing yourself down and running a heart rate that's a bit more reasonable, that's going to make it so much easier on like joints and just letting your body acclimate to this thing we call running. There are times when I don't think it's a great tool. And I coach about 125 like high school athletes. And I don't think it's quite as powerful a tool for them. We're working on very short distance. We're working on sprints. We're doing very fast stuff. Their bodies tend to have very like high heart rates. And they are really kind of developing their aerobic capacity at this point in their life. And so I think it's just a matter of kind of where we are in our journey and kind of seeing like which training tool is the most applicable to you. So for me, right, with like a history of running and Achilles issues, like this is a great tool for me to say like, hey, it's easy for that heart rate to get away from me. Like just keep it at 140 or less. Or whatever my particular numbers are. And that's it's not a complicated method. And I think it's a really good tool to use. So that's my take on it.
No, I agree. And for those of you that don't know, it's 180 minus your age is kind of like that's what they would call like the sweet spot of where you should sit. So if you're 30 years old, 180 minus your age is 150 beats per minute. That's your MAF heart rate. And that's like kind of your go all day zone. And I agree with you. Like, I think it's in a really, really great way for someone to train, mostly an adult, who, probably like, I think one of the best things about MAF training is that it forces you to slow down, and then it forces you to, have better, like, I guess you say coordination, better form, better, everything alignment, because you're not going to be able to get faster unless you can fix all of that stuff. And I've just noticed with some of the athletes that I coach, like that's one of the first things that like they are running, and they're running like 7:30, 8-minute pace, but their heart rate's just skyrocketing. And then I tell them, okay, we're going to do a block or two of just MAF training, or maybe we're going to do a whole year of it. And we're going to see what happens. And after a couple months of it, they start, at that 140 heart rate or that 150, all of a sudden their times start dropping like crazy. And so they're getting faster with less energy output. And so their efficiency is increasing. And so, who was that? Ronald Winkler. If you're still here, very, very useful and good question. Got another question from John Trulove, who was just on the show last week. How is nutrition different from ultras compared to tris, like gels or quick food to drink? And then he follows it up with says, in most ultras, even faster ones, like sub 24 hours, you're eating some real food. Do you do that in triathlons?
So I think nutrition is very similar. In fact, Ryan, you probably are great to speak to this because you've done so much of both, but like, I bet you are able to take some of the same nutrition guidelines from triathlon and use it in ultras. But what's nice about triathlon is you have this really large bike section where your stomach and your gut can handle like taking in really whatever you want. It can be real. In my opinion, I'm probably on that edge of like, I should be sticking more to simple goos and simple sugars and things like that. But I have such a hard time with that much sugar, just like from a gut issue, that I really do prefer real food. It just makes me feel so much better to have something real in my stomach when I'm going for, anything over like 6 hours. And so I do real food, and I do that for full Ironmans only, and a half I would do more simple stuff. But when I am building up for an Ironman race and I'm doing a half Ironman to test for a full, I'll do a lot of the same nutrition that I would for a full Ironman, because the primary goal is that full Ironman. The half I want to kind of use as a testing nutrition, testing bike equipment, all that stuff. And so from ultra, the one thing that I would be concerned about is the amount of bouncing that you do when you're running. Sometimes there's certain types of food that don't do well. You don't want to like chug a milkshake, right? And then go out and run. Or at least I don't want to do that. Like, I used to date this girl, and she could literally like eat and drink anything and then go out and do a track workout. And I was never able to do that. Like, I was always like, well, gotta eat my specific lunch that I have to have, but today's a track workout day. I can't have anything out of the ordinary there. So I think all of us are slightly different when it comes to like our guts and what they can handle for food. But I like real food for long stuff. If I was to do, ultras, I would probably consider a fair amount of real food, and you just slow down enough that your stomach's not bouncing so much to hurt. And you can do that in an ultra. You have time to kind of eat and process the food, or at least I would if I was doing an ultra. Some of the front runners probably are well practiced at getting those calories in and processing them.
Yeah. Have you done an ultra?
No, I did marathons, and I always thought I could maybe do like a 50K, but I love running trails. And so I actually, I think more than anything else, like the culture of ultra running, the people, the race directors, the races themselves, like, is so fantastic that I would definitely consider doing an ultra, especially if my Achilles were ever like strong and solid. I would be all about doing ultras, because what I used to do was, multiple 100-mile weeks. Like, I used to train a lot of volume. And so I would have done very well. I think I would have enjoyed doing ultras, because I would do such long stuff on trails, and I just love being out there on the trails. And so I think that would be a fun event to get into for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we got a question from John Marangello. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Question for Matt. What distances would you recommend having someone done in training before attempting their first Ironman? So what distance of a swim, of a bike, of a run before you try your first Ironman?
Okay, so I know in marathoning, a lot of the ways that we'll build up for a marathon would be like, build up your long run until you get to some of the plans will even be like, once you get to mile 8, if you can get to an 18 miler or, whatever it is, like, you'll make the last, 8 miles, which I think is a lot. And so I can tell you what I've done, which is I'll build up each of the individual 3 sports where I can pretty much go the distance. Running wise, I usually cap it at around 22, 23 for my long runs. And then for bike, I'll do quite a few 100-milers. And the reason is that because I feel like after you've done about 3 or 4 of those 100-milers or 5 to 6 hour bike rides, your body really starts to adapt to that distance. And then swim wise, it's really not the most challenging part of an Ironman. I do swim at least a 5,000. So that's longer than Ironman distance. But when I'm actually doing some of those biggest workouts, those will be, somewhere in the line of an hour swim, and then I'll do 100-mile bike ride, and then I'll get off the bike and I'll do something along the lines of a 9-mile or so at a pretty hard kind of effort. So that's kind of, Ironman-ish pace, or even faster potentially. So that would be like the big key workout before an Ironman. And then I'd follow that up the next day with another hour bike ride and a long run of about that, kind of like I said before, that 20 to 22. So it's kind of a big weekend. And then that's the biggest weekend. And then you would have a bit of a taper and then go into an Ironman race. But that's how I've done it in the past. It's worked really well for me. But there's a huge build-up process to get to that particular weekend. And, we do it on the weekend because that's when we have time with family stuff, which I don't even know if I should say that we have time. We take time to do it.
Yeah.
But those are long days for sure.
Yeah. So this is like, I know people love to debate this, but what do you think is most beneficial to be what should be your most focus, your most, if you had to pick a swim, bike, or run, what do you have to be the strongest at to have a good, solid Ironman?
I think so. What do you have to be? So I thought you were going to go a different direction. I thought you were going to ask what sport should people focus on? And I would say the sport that they're weakest at. But what do you need to be? What's the most ideal? Cycling for sure. You really do need to be able to make the distance, and that's the majority of the time, right? So, I'm around 10 hours for an Ironman. I've gone just under 10 hours for an Ironman, and I'm spending 5 hours on the bike. So 50% of the time of the race is spent on the bike. So, just by the numbers there, if you're a good cyclist, that's going to help you, I think, the most, because you can walk in an Ironman race.
Yeah.
You can't walk through the run.
Yeah.
A lot of people will say that running is probably the most beneficial because it is at the end. And I do agree with that. But cycling definitely helps.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And that's what I do. With my athletes is those are training for Ironman. We do so many bike workouts because like you said, you're spending half or more of your time on the bike, and the swim, I mean, you're going to be in such good shape by race day that you're going to be able to get through this unless you've not swam anything leading up to it.
Honestly, I bet you haven't swam in a while. I bet you'd be able to finish the swim no problem.
Yeah, it's 2.4 miles. It's a long time. You're going to be in the water for 45 minutes to an hour, maybe a little longer, something like that. But it's not the worst part of you're going to be in such good shape by the time you hit race day that you're going to get through that, and you're going to be oh, let's go. It's already over. And then you get on the bike and you feel like you're on the bike all day.
Yeah.
And
you're on the bike so long, and you're just so happy to get off the bike and start running. You're oh, thank God it's over.
But then your legs don't work. And
yeah.
But just kind of what you said, if you have to get off that bike feeling pretty fresh, to go run a marathon. And if you're not, you're going to be walking a lot of it, and that's not the worst thing in the world, but
right. I think the thing with that is when you've done some of those really long bike rides, for some reason, it's after about 3 or 4 of those, your body starts to be oh, I can do 100 miles, in a race, 112, it'll feel like the same thing. But then you can do that and get off and survive it. The first time you do a 100-mile bike ride, you're going to feel like going and laying down and dying, which is just normal. But after a couple, your body adapts. And I think it's like that with long runs to some degree, but I think it's more I feel it more with cycling. So,
right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. We'll see. Kevin Coffee has a question. What brand of bike for the first time triathlon or rider?
Well, I wouldn't. There's not necessarily okay. So to relate this to running, I don't think that there's a magic brand of shoe that works for everyone. I think that there are a lot of really good shoes. There are probably some brands that I would steer clear of. It used to be like Skechers was just like this like kids skateboard shoe or whatever, and then they started making really good running shoes. But you know, there are certain brands that I would probably steer away from. I wouldn't get like just any sort of Chinese frame that you find for cheap on like Alibaba or something like that. But I would say that you should go and have potentially a bike fitting done, which this might be asking too much for like a first bike. But if you're spending a lot of money on a bike, you can kind of have someone help you make that decision. They can look at your flexibility, they can look at your reach and your stack height and all this information. They can say like, there's a certain bike that's going to work really well for you. And they may be even able to point you towards a handful of brands or a handful of specific models within a couple of brands, where then you can go ride the bikes and see what's best for you. So that's the most ideal way. Again, it's not the fastest way and it's not the cheapest way to do things, but it is a way to do it. Other than that, like if you're just like, hey, Matt, like give me a brand that's good. Like I think Specialized is great. The bike behind me is a BMC. It's probably a smaller brand. Like Trek, I had some issues with Trek, but I think that's, it doesn't mean that they're a bad brand. That like Canyon makes really good bikes, but there's a little bit of expectations that you'll be able to kind of manage some of the bike stuff yourself. Mm-hmm. But if you can find a local bike shop to talk to, that would be great. And then don't hesitate. I think used bikes, if you're getting into biking and you're new with it, the thing that I'll usually tell people to do is make friends either through a tri club or a bike club or something like that. Make friends with anyone. They will be a bike nerd, and they will probably be okay with going and shopping for a used bike with you, because they'll look at stuff like the wheels and the tires and the shifting and make sure all the components are working correctly, because they like to do that stuff. They're dorks, they're tri-dorks, they're bike dorks, whatever they are. So use those people to your advantage. Like ask them, hey, is this a good deal? They'll tell you what a good deal is, because it's fun for them to look at bikes. So make friends and use your friends.
Yeah. Great advice. So let's pivot a little bit into YouTube, and tell me how you got started in it. What were some of your early inspirations? Like you had mentioned earlier, you mentioned Ginger Runner, and I've always said that was he's been one of my inspirations from the beginning, along with Jamil Curry from Run Steep, Get High. But who were some of your YouTube inspirations that made you go, I think I can do something like that? Or that's really cool.
Well, Ginger Runner is like an amazing person. I've never met him, but hopefully I will. He's like not very far from me. He's like 2 hours north.
Nice.
But he he is making like a lot of these trail films at the time. This was 2.5, 3 years ago. He's making trail films, and he's making his own music to go along with his films. And I'm like, that just blows my mind. I'm like, who is this guy? Like, he's amazing cinematographer, and like he's making music. I was just so amazed at that piece. And you go, and I think all of us are like this, where we go and we run on these amazing trails. We see these waterfalls, and we're like, how do you capture that and put it in a video to share and let people know like just how pretty this stuff is? Because when you take a picture with your camera on your phone or whatever, you're like, yeah, it was kind of like this, and it's not doing it justice. Whereas someone like Ginger Runner, he has the skill set to really like bring you in and make it like make you feel like you're there, which is just magical. But I started watching like more and more YouTube, and there was some like photographers. There was a guy named like Peter McKinnon, who I'm sure you've heard of. Mm-hmm. He like started a YouTube channel, and I was basically like watching another guy that told Peter McKinnon to like start a channel, And then I watched, so you're kind of like watching this guy like start a channel, and it's a hugely successful channel, right? Like he's got like 5 million followers. But like what he's doing is he's teaching people how to take photos, and he's teaching people how to film stuff. And so you're like, okay, can I use this knowledge to make that trail video that I so like desperately want to make with the, GoPro 4 that I bought for Christmas or whatever, right? And it's like trying, and you're trying, and you're trying, and you're trying, and it's like I have a lot of respect for all these people that are doing this. It's like, what you want to see the final results end up being, and you're not there yet. That's awesome. Like, at least you know what you want to get to, and you're probably willing to work towards that. And so I think that's kind of where I was as I was like trying to figure this stuff out. I was doing stuff with my phone. I really wanted to make, trail running videos and things like that. But I just wanted them to be like really inspirational. And then I wanted to bring that piece to triathlon because I didn't think it had it. I didn't think that triathlon had anything pretty and inspirational. And so that was the original goal. And then along with that, just kind of the fear that the sport of triathlon was going to kind of fall apart or slip to nothing. Like the numbers were really declining. Ryan, probably while you were doing the sport, it was pretty solid. And then as you may have even started to see some of it slip. And I really do think the sport can be like a pretty sport. The open water swimming is gorgeous. Being out on your bike, you can be on the trails running. Like all of us love these things. We all think that they're beautiful. And I just wanted to kind of have a channel that could show that. And I'm still working on it. Like I still don't think I'm anywhere close, but that's the goal.
Awesome. Well, I'll just tell you, you're definitely doing a great job. So, I love watching your videos. So, you're doing it.
I think I'm still like, I have a video idea where it's like, should triathletes run trails? And it's completely bogus topic. The only reason I want to do it is just to like make that like trail running footage, right?
Yeah.
But I've been meaning to make that video for like a year, and it's like my Achilles is so bad. Like, when do I make this video? And anyway, it's funny because it's you never know if you can do it justice, right? Where you're like, I hope that I can make a good video showing this, beautiful trails. Like I have gorgeous trails like out in the back of my yard. Like we bought this house because they were close to trails, and
nice.
So you're like, I love these trails. I love being on them. I love, and you want to show that off. Can you do it justice? And I don't know. I mean, I'm going to try, but it's probably going to take a couple of years of effort to figure it all out, but we'll see. Man.
So do you remember what your first video was about? And the reason why I asked this is because like, I think a lot of people that are trying to get into this look at like a channel like yours or something, the video that you put out like last week or this week or something, and they're like, man, I don't know if I could ever, like, I want to do that. Like you were saying, like, what you want, but you just can't do it. Yeah. So I think it's always kind of encouraging to like hear about or see like the first video that someone made. I mean, MKBHD, like he always talks about that. Like if you watch him, like the first video I ever made was me like just talking about I don't even know what it was, like a cell phone or no, it wasn't even that. It was I don't know what it was, but it was like you go back and watch something like that.
You're just like talking about technology, and you're like, how did you do this? How did you turn into the guy that uses red cinema cameras all the time and robots for?
No, exactly.
The first video that I did do one thing that was a little bit weird. Like I made some videos for my kids, and the kids were like reviewing toys. And that helped because then you're like learning how to edit stuff, and you're just kind of learning about like music and having that be part of the video. And then the first video that I posted that was my own was like a birthday video. I turned 39, and I went and I did, like a standard birthday thing, which would be like, go swim, do some sort of swim workout with like 39 laps or 30, whatever. And then go bike 39 miles and then go run 39, so you do that. And so I made this video, And in the video, all I'm doing is like kind of talking about the workout and showing some clips and stuff like that, and thanking the people that, you know, sent me birthday messages. Like, you sent me a happy birthday message on Facebook. Thank you. I appreciate it. Like, that's it. That's the whole video. Yeah. And I think it's not good at all. It's a horrible video. It's still up there. And I leave it up there on purpose because I think it's okay if people see that, not to be like, oh, look how far I've come, you know, I'm so great. But, you know, it's just part of the history of it. And I think that that's okay. Even by that point, I was already thinking like, okay, if I stand near a window, I'll have natural light hit my face, and that will be, so there are things that I think are worth learning about, as far as like lighting and things like that. You know, maybe you could learn it before your first video or after your first video. The key is just making that first video, you know, like, get over yourself. No one's going to see it. Even now, as I talk about that first video all the time, I've talked about it in other videos where I tell other people to start YouTube channels. You know, I'll tell people like, oh, you know, you can go check out the first video if you want to. There's still only probably like maybe 200 people that have seen the video, like not many people at all. Yeah. And so maybe that number will swell to 1,000, right? But like, that's still not a ton of views, you know, compared to reviewing, you know, some sort of Garmin watch. Those get a lot of views. So
yeah. No, I agree with you. Like, there's a couple videos on my channel that are private, that not private, but they're just like unlisted. Yeah. And like, they're like my first video that I ever made. And it was like, I think I had my cell phone and I was running trails and I was like trying to talk to it, like, you know, like I'd seen Ginger Runner do or somebody like that. Yeah. And I was like just testing it out. I'm like, is this something I want to do? And like, if I went back and watched something like that, like I would probably, like, I don't know, like, but like, I think that's where everyone starts, is just feeling like a complete idiot filming themselves. Like, nobody feels like they do 5 years later. Like, everybody starts in the same place. And I just think that's really like important, because the hardest thing is posting that first video. And
yeah, you kind of have to get over it. Like, you have to decide, like, am I going to try this or not? And if you decide to try it, do it and get over it. And then, you know, there's a saying, and it's like, don't compare, you know, one person's finish line to another person's starting line, right? Where it's like, you're killing yourself if you are, you know, trying to compare your very first video to MKBHD's, you know, like latest, greatest video after he's been doing it for, I don't know how long he's been doing it, like 15 years or something crazy. I don't even know if that's right, but something crazy like that. But yeah, don't compare your first video. Like, that's your first video. Like, you need to make, you know, you need to make 100 videos before you're going to like really get into it or whatever. Or even like, I still am not happy with the lighting of me currently. Right. So it's like, you know, you're still going to want to make changes, but, you know, make sure you at least give yourself, you know, 10, 20 videos before you start to be super critical of yourself, because you should be happy if you make that first video and you get it out there, because that's a huge success in my opinion.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. And I see you, Dave. I see you, Dave. I'm not, those will never go public. Yeah. So, what would be some, like, what would be gear that someone could start with? Like, do they need, what does someone need to start a YouTube channel?
Okay. YouTube channel, not triathlon. Okay. So I would start with your phone, with your smart camera, if you have a smartphone. I think that that's the right way to go. I would, you know, we just talked about this, where it's like, make a couple videos, see if you like doing this. If you don't, that's okay. Like, move on. No one's going to look at those videos. You can make them private if you want to, or you can just leave them up there. There's still not a ton of people that are just going to miraculously like wander onto your channel and share it with 1,000 people. It just doesn't seem to happen, unfortunately. Yeah. But like, I would say like, start with your smartphone, and then start with natural light. Like, if you can stand next to a window, you'll get a lot of natural light. You'll get a big window, which is great for videos typically. And the problem with smartphones is they have small sensors, but man, these days they're actually really good. And I might suggest going with the smartphone for a really long time, because you have this big jump in price. I'm looking at like this camera that I have on my desk that's, it's like a $2,000 camera. And I'm like, is it really that much better than a smartphone? Like only a handful of people are going to tell the difference. And so you have this huge jump in price plus all these lenses for not a great value, not a big jump in production. And so gear that you need, your phone, lights, decent lights, one guy I was watching the other night, he was saying like, you should spend as much money on lights as you spend on camera stuff. You don't have to start with that, but like I said, use a window or something like that to kind of get you that natural light that's nice and big and fantastic. It's very flattering, for people to have a look at that. But editing software, I think, is really important. Being able to kind of take that footage, and I say and I am horrible actually at talking to a camera, and so because I'm not good at it, I lean heavily on the editing software of choice. And you can use something like iMovie or Windows Movie Maker, any of these software that's not super expensive to make some of those first edits. Again, see if you love it, put it out there. Do give yourself the time to do the edit because that will take a lot of time. Put it out there. Don't invest so much of your heart in it that you're upset that 1,000 people don't see it, because they won't. Really only friends and family are going to check it out at first, which at first you may be disappointed because you did put this huge effort into it, but really that's your crutch. That's your option to say like, hey, not a ton of people are going to see this. Let's try some stuff. Let's try to be funny. Let's try to, let's do a product review. Let's try, doing this while running. Like try whatever you want to try, because you don't have 1 million people looking at you. I don't have 1 million people looking at my videos. And so I can experiment with stupid, super overly dramatic bike intros. And it's not a big deal. So.
No, but I mean, yeah, like you'll look back on that like years from now and you'll be glad you did it though.
Hopefully I'll be embarrassed because I'll be better.
No, but I agree with you. I think most people already have the camera they need in their pocket on their phone. You can download free software. I tell everyone DaVinci Resolve is free and it's got 99% of what you need. Like it's got 100% of what you need and it's got 99% of the actual program.
What's crazy about the program is it's better than like the majority of the stuff that's out there where you would spend, I don't know, a couple $100s on software. DaVinci Resolve is better in a lot of ways than the top stuff on the market. So
yeah, you get for free, you get like the software that they use making actual real Hollywood movies, like in the color section.
For free.
It's just for free. It's incredible. And then like music, like YouTube has a page, or I don't know if they still do, they did, but there's like free music that you can download from YouTube to put in your YouTube videos. And so like you probably don't need to pay any money to get started.
And I have a lot of friends that have started channels and they'll dump their favorite song in there, and that's okay. Like it's not a crime. You're not going to go to jail, but at the same time, it is probably worth using the free music that YouTube has their own it's basically licensed free for you to use. It's there for you to use. I would use that. Even though it's maybe not your favorite song or whatever it is, I still think it's better just because, again, if you post your favorite band song, the band is going to come in and take that video and use it, monetize it for their own, their own purposes. I think that's how it works for YouTube, which is fine. And that may not be a problem for you. But maybe your YouTube channel gets really large in the future and you wish that first video didn't have that music embedded in it and you're kind of stuck that way after the fact. So,
yeah, no, I totally agree. Do you save all your, what's that?
What do you use for music?
I use both Epidemic Sound and Artlist. Sometimes sometimes I'm like digging through Artlist and you get down like you just like, for me, like I'm so picky with music that like I'll just keep going and going and going, and it seems like I'll reach a point of no return on one website, and then sometimes I can just flip over to the other website and I'll find exactly what I need right away. It doesn't always work like that, but I used to just have Epidemic Sound and then I switched to Artlist, and then I was like I just have both of them, and it costs money, which is,
Yeah,
it
it costs
sucks.
money.
But
That's
if
part
I
of it. I
can
mean,
find the music I want, like, then it works.
and you
What about
don't
you?
have like, I use Epidemic Sound. I've used Artlist on some projects for some other things, like some other video projects, which is great. But Epidemic Sound is excellent. I find great music there. I'm a little tired of that library, so it'd be nice to
Hmm.
try something different.
Yeah, don't ever pick songs on the first page. They're
Yeah,
great, but
no,
you'll
yeah.
see them in every YouTube video you watch for the next 3 weeks.
That's the problem I have with it is like even if I dig in and I find something that I think is like really unique and I use it, and then like inevitably like 2 weeks later, some big time YouTuber is using the exact same song, and I'm like, I really need to switch music libraries. But I think that this is
Yeah.
like a problem that you and I will notice and no one else would notice. So
Yeah, well, it is funny. Like, people have commented like on some of my videos. They'd be like, "Hey, I just heard this song somewhere else," and I was like, "Well, yeah, like we all get it
yeah,
from the same place."
absolutely. Sometimes like with Artlist, it'll be like, I heard this song in a commercial somewhere.
Hmm.
So I think
Well,
that's a good service, but
that's the thing with Artlist. It's you can use the music anywhere. So that's where I got all the music for the documentary series I did. Like you can, yeah, Epidemic Sound. You have to pay a lot extra for that license,
yeah.
but
What documentary do you think that you will do next?
I don't know.
You would think you'll do another one?
Yeah, for sure. I've been talking to, there's a couple of different companies that have reached out, and
Really?
one TV channel that I'm really excited about.
Wow.
But everything's on hold. Like there's
Yeah.
no production happening right now.
And these will be ultra related documentaries. Or is this
Maybe.
secret? You're gonna have to spill the secret now.
Well, things I've been talking about, there's been some ultra related, and then the one TV channel, like I have no idea what they want, but we're emailing back and forth, and it's cool.
Wow.
So,
That is,
yeah. So hopefully, I don't know, next summer something might happen, but it's really super just like nothing.
if you're
is
ever in the
happening.
Pacific Northwest and you want just some guy that can hold a camera, like, dude, hit me up, because I think that's what I said to you the first time I commented on your video. I was
Really?
like, you're amazing. If you're ever in this area, like,
Yeah.
let me know if I can hold a camera for you, because
That's awesome.
yeah, I mean, I would love to help, right? Because like
Yeah.
the stuff that you do is really, really neat. And
Well, thanks, man.
it's
Yeah,
cool to see that.
I mean, I'll definitely hit you up if I go back out there. Like, that would have been cool. Had I connected the dots, when I was out there for Bigfoot last year, the Bigfoot
I
200.
think that's when I first started like stalking you.
Okay. Nice.
First
And that's
kind
totally fine to do on YouTube.
Yeah.
So are you somebody that saves all your footage, or do you delete all your footage?
I save it all.
Yeah.
And
me
that's
too.
really bad.
Yeah.
Well, and it's what I do is I like there's ways you can do this where you can do it more intelligently than I do, where you can archive your footage where you're just archiving the stuff that you've used within a project. And I don't do that. I take the entire project, every bit of video. If I'm just like, completely mess up a take, and I'm like, have the camera just staring at the floor, and I'm like recorded that, and then it's like that footage gets added to, whatever else I was doing B-roll for some product that I'm reviewing. All of that stuff gets put in a folder, and then it gets archived, and it goes onto a hard drive, and I do a yearly hard drive. And so I have a 2020 hard drive that I'm excited to move on to the next hard drive.
Nice.
With all of the footage from that.
Yeah.
So I mean, a lot of times I think like, well, storage is cheap, just keep everything. I'm not sure that's the case, because now I'm doing almost everything in 4K, which I do like to do. I want to do the highest quality that I can, because there's a lot you can do. You can crop in with stuff. You can do things different ways with 4K. It's not just about, the final 4K product. But that's a lot of bandwidth. That's a lot of storage space, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm keeping everything. I could be convinced otherwise.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I keep everything. And it's gotten really crazy since within the last year I got an Atomos Ninja, and it records everything in ProRes. And that, I
That's what
mean,
I
like,
want to do on those.
what'd you say?
I do want an Atomos Ninja.
Yeah, it's great. It's amazing. And recording in ProRes is definitely great if you edit on a Mac, because I don't ever have to make proxies. Like, it edits and it renders like real fast.
Wow.
But it got really crazy for storage space. Like, I think for the Triple Crown series that I did, I had 7 terabytes of footage. Like for 2020, I think I'm already up to like 7 or 8 terabytes of footage, like just from like vlogs, which is like absolutely ridiculous. But like you said, storage is really cheap.
Right. But I mean, I bet you're probably using like you're probably potentially using like your GoPro Hero 9 for some stuff, right? Where it's like that's shooting up to 5K, and you might be using it 4K, but like, you know, it's still a lot of data, and it adds up. Like if I go for a 6-hour bike ride and I'm filming stuff, I've cut back on that a little bit, where I'll just like let the camera roll and be like, I need to save this because, you know, what if some car hits you? I don't know. But like, I've been cutting back on like keeping, you know, ridiculously boring bike rides because there's, you know, right now I'm trying to, you know, when I do film stuff, it's usually like to tell a specific story. And I think if you're shooting your video while like trying to tell a specific story, you'll have less junk footage. Whereas, you know, and I still think that there's a time and space for being like, oh, that's pretty, get that. But at the same time, like if you have a finish line in mind or whatever, then, you know, you can kind of think like, okay, I need this shot and I need this shot, and this stuff will go well. But don't just film random biking, you know, for no reason.
Right. Yeah, and I think I saw in one of your recent videos you have the Hero 9, and that's what I have too. But I still film in 2.7K on that. Because I think the stabilization is better. And
do you?
Yeah, I mean, I put it in 4K, and it just, to me, my eye, it just feels like it doesn't work as well.
Yeah, well, that would make sense because you've got a lot more space to work with for it to stabilize footage. And honestly, 2.7 is great. So a lot of what I've done is like, you know, maybe work on, I usually work kind of in between a 4K and a 1080p timeline, like somewhere in, not 2.7, but somewhere in that range, where then if I'm shooting 4K, then I can move stuff around, I can scale stuff, I can crop into something, and then I export out as 4K. And that works really well. I may change that up for 2021, but I haven't figured that out yet. But like 2.7, whenever I film something on a GoPro with 2.7, that still seems like plenty of resolution. Like I'm not lacking at that point. When you're doing slow-mo 1080 or something like that, it's still fine. Like you can still up-res that to 4K. And I do that probably on I would say you would have a hard time looking at any of my videos and not finding a video where I filmed something in 1080 and scaled it up to 4K. And I don't think, I mean, maybe it's not the sharpest, but I don't know if the sharpest is always the best either. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's the big like talk with all these cameras coming out that can record in 6K and 8K. And now Blackmagic has a camera that can record in 12K. And you're just like,
is that what you have? You have the Blackmagic, the Ursa?
No. No, I don't.
What do you use? What am I looking at right now?
Right now it's a Sony A7 III.
Okay.
And
I've got that one.
Is that what you have too? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's the first camera that I've purchased that, I recently purchased the A7S III as well. And so now I have 2 cameras.
Oh, nice.
But I just got the A7S III. The A7 III was the first camera that I kind of made the big purchase. And I think I got like, this is kind of like dumb luck, which is like my whole life. But that camera's been fantastic, right? Where it's been an excellent camera. I started, you know, filming these things with my either GoPro or phone. And then I bumped up to the A7 III, and it's been excellent. So
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And I like the A7 III. I'm definitely ready to, move on to like 10-bit color though, like something else, because like the A7 III is what I filmed the whole documentary series on. And it was just like when you're really getting in there and like really trying to edit the color, like 8-bit is really hard. I mean, you can make it work, but there's just so much more information with a better camera. And I mean, the A7 III is not, it's no slouch. I mean, but it's more of it's a middle camera. It's a photo camera and a video camera. But it's definitely not a dedicated video camera. It works.
I think it's probably, I think from a photography standpoint, it's an excellent option. And then videography, it's definitely no slouch. I think that I would have, in fact, one of my buddies just bought that camera. And I was like, it's a great camera. You know, I was like, here's a couple to choose from. But this one's still great and it's discounted now. So go for it.
Yeah.
And you can start, getting a lens collection, right? You know, and it's like, it's just a great camera and it gives you a lot of options going forward. So,
yeah, I just got a new lens and this is the first time I'm using it. I'm very excited about it. Because it was on a huge sale. I got a Sony 16-35 GM, and it's a killer lens. Like,
you're gonna
taking some photos of my kids, and it was just like blown away by it. And
I think that is almost, for what you do, I think that's going to be a perfect lens, because you can run it done with that lens, and you can still you can. I think it seems like it would lend itself well to filming stuff, and you can get that shallow depth of field, and you can get. I just think it's going to be an excellent choice for you. I think you'll really enjoy it. So
yeah. I mean, I've always thought that I would, if the first like GM lens I would get would be the like 24-70 or whatever it is. But for right now, for my YouTube channel, I think like I really like having that wide field of view. And the 16 is amazing, and punching into 35, I mean, like that's perfect for vlogging. And like this is on 35 mil right now, so it's like it seemed like a really good lens to get. So.
I think the 24-70 would be great if you were doing photography. I'd be like, you should have gotten 24-70.
Yeah.
But for film stuff, I think you got the right lens.
Yeah, and I have the Tamron 28-75 weird length.
It's a weird lens, but like
I love that lens too. But
that's so my friend that just bought the A7 III, he was like, "What lens should I get?" And I was like, "Get the Tamron." Yeah, I think it's a better value for what you're getting. So I don't have. I have like the kit lens for the 24-70 range, but I don't use it. In fact, I think I'm going to try to sell it because I'm not going to ever use it. And so, I love lenses. I have a lot of primes, which I like using, but it's I still need some different ranges of things. So. I don't have anything like really good and long. And so like, if I am filming like an event, you really want to have something where you can zoom and kind of see some stuff. But I haven't done that recently because all the races are canceled. And then, I like to be participating in the races if I can. And so having the wide angles are great, right? Because you're there, you're right in the action. You feel like everyone feels like they're right there and they're part of it. And so I prefer that if possible. Again, I know eventually I need to get like a 70-200. I just haven't done that yet. So
yeah. Do you plan out your videos? Do you write a script? How do you work on them? I'm torn on this one because I don't want them to feel like they're scripted, but they totally are. I can't just so a lot of what I've been doing recently is product reviews, and I cannot memorize the specs on all of these, watches or, products or whatever it is. I can barely remember like my middle name. And so having some talking points really helps me stay focused and at least like not miss as much stuff.
And I've done it a lot of different ways. I've done it like completely unscripted. And I feel like I end up just wandering a lot when I talk. And so I do think it's better to have something a little bit more scripted. I think that I'm hoping that I can move away from that a little bit more, because I really love joking around with people, and I just need to work on joking around with the camera.
Yeah.
And I think if you listen to like my podcast, I have this podcast that I'm a part of. I think if you listen to that, obviously that's completely unscripted, the whole thing. Like I just show up and talk. I think that you'll find that those are a lot more like fun and funny and stuff like that. And then you get to my videos and it's like, this guy is super boring. He's listing the specs of a watch. Oh my God, how could this be more entertaining? But yeah, so I would love to have a little bit more like joking around and stuff like that. And I think that's going to be easier if it's unscripted. So
yeah.
How about you?
With you. Most like for product reviews and stuff, that's all pretty scripted, not word for word, but I'll have an outline. I've used a teleprompter a few times. I'm using a teleprompter right now so I can see both of us like right in the middle of the lens, which is great. But yeah, like I would like to, like, I feel like my videos come across a lot more professional when I do put a lot of work into them ahead of time. So I would like to, developing just a routine for that has been something that I have been working on recently. But like,
yeah, that's one of the things that I wanted to do too, because I want to put out more content, but it's a big process where you're like, okay, then I need to figure out what I'm going to say. And then you need to do the talking to the camera part, which takes a long time. And then B-roll, which takes a long time. And then editing, which takes a long time. And it's like, by the time you get to it, you're like, I spent like 2 days on a video, and you want to turn out videos, ideally you'd want to turn out a couple of videos per week, which I'm not doing. But I think that, a lot of people will say like batch process stuff where you're like, write all your scripts and, one day and then a different day, like just record all of your videos on that, day, the talking head part, right? Where it's like, sit down and do 3 or 4 videos that you have prepared for already. I'm not doing that, but I know that I should. So
yeah,
hopefully we'll get there. Right.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's just like with working a full-time job, and then I have a part-time job too. And then I try to do YouTube on the side.
Engineer, you work at a university.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you run a little bit here and there.
Yeah. Every once in a while I get some time to run. Yeah.
So it's embarrassing. I was going to say, I feel like it's embarrassing how much time the YouTube stuff takes. Like, I never want to admit to it. People are like, how much time does it take to make a video? And I'm like, just sit down and do it. No. It takes a long time.
Well, that's the thing where it's like, you don't, like, at least for me, like, I need to get over the fact that I'm actually working on the video when I'm thinking about it and when I'm like working on a script or like researching stuff. But a lot of times I don't feel like I'm working on the video until I actually have the camera in front of my face. Like, but I need to just, like get better at being okay with putting in the work beforehand that it takes to create a video. But
we'll get there.
So what advice do you have for people that want to get into YouTube? And then we'll kind of wrap this up after this.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely start with what you have. Don't wait until you have the right camera. Don't wait until you have, some sort of special tripod. You can use your books, just stack them up, make it happen with whatever you have, but get started. So that's probably, I think, one of the biggest things. Again, you can take, YouTube itself is an amazing resource for learning stuff. So if you want to learn how to make a great video, there's 1,000 videos on that, and they're good. There's a lot of good content. Like, this is the stuff that I've tried to figure out, and I'm still trying to figure out, now. And so I think that there's that, but I think the key, is just starting and start with what you have. So
yeah, it's great advice. Just start, just do it. So what's next, for your channel? Like what, and then for also triathlon, like What are you working on now? What are you hoping to do in the next 6 months to a year?
I have like probably 100 video ideas or more that I like.
Nice.
Well, okay. So I was going to ask you if you had the same thing, because this will happen. Like, you'll have an idea in the middle of the night and you'll write it down.
Yep.
But yeah, so I have like a million ideas, and it's hard because other stuff comes around, right? Where you're like, some product is announced and I feel like I need to talk about it because it's a triathlon product, and I feel like people want that information, and I think it's good for me to pass on, my opinion on the product or whatever it is. And so, like, for example, there's like a new Wahoo triathlon watch. Well, it's like, I should probably talk about that. Like, I talk about triathlon watches all the time. And so that's probably, it might not be the next video, but it's coming up in the next 2 weeks or so. Nice. Again, I want to do it justice, right? I want to do the people that worked really hard on these watches, building them. Like, I want to do a proper review of it, which means, swimming, biking, and running a little bit with the device and seeing how it handles it. I'll talk about Black Friday specials, because that's, the topic du jour for right now. So I'll have that video come out, probably the morning of Black Friday, with kind of what deals, sports tech deals, but probably anything triathlon related. Like, for example, Roka wetsuits will have 50% off of their wetsuits, which is, I think, a good brand. There are other companies that, do wetsuits that I think are great, but they're always on sale and they always try to make it look like it's some sort of special deal. So I'll talk to the products that I think are good that way. And then, like I said, some more watch reviews coming down for sure down the pipeline. But I want to try to do, more than just product reviews, because, ideally those are helpful for triathletes, but how do we get people over the hump and into the sport? And I think that's kind of some of the most important stuff. So some videos, how to race, ideally, like what it, experience of what it feels like to race. Like, here's me going through an entire race with a camera. Like, this is what you can expect. Again, I need races to start before I can actually show stuff. But yeah, I'll have some like, other stuff that's really seasonal. Like, I'll do a shopping guide kind of stuff, like where I talk about gift ideas for runners, gift ideas for swimmers, gift ideas for cyclists. So all that stuff coming up, and I always like to put out something fun for like April Fool's Day, because I don't joke as much as I should on my channel. And it's like one chance where I'm like, just be stupid and do it. So I've got to come up with something funny for that, and I'll do that soon. But I only put out one video per week usually. And so I have 100 ideas and, 52 weeks to really put videos out. And ideally, I would love to put out more videos per week than one. And so hopefully someday I'll get there. But right now, with like work and family, it's one. I'm barely making one at this point. So
yeah, I hear you, man. It's tough, especially right now. I don't know if your kids are at home or in school, but
I'm actually homeschooling.
Okay.
And software development. It's a trick.
Yeah.
Will you talk on your channel about, you have a 50K coming up in March, and then you're going to train for a 100-miler, right? In May?
Yeah. Yep, that's right.
Is that, do you think your content will revolve around those races, or do you think you'll sprinkle in different stuff? What do you got coming up?
Yeah, that's a good question. The way I kind of like, I'm always kind of in like a training mode. And so like right now I've been talking a lot about just kind of like in this like transitional period where you're just in between seasons. The No Business 100 was 7 weeks ago, and
congratulations on that, by the way.
Thanks, man.
Amazing.
Thanks,
Dude,
man.
I have another question.
Yeah.
While I'm talking about the No Business, what was your favorite part of that race? My favorite part of the video was like the sheer rock wall that you're running, kind of like under. That looked the coolest to me. I mean, I'm sure that you saw a lot of cool things, but
yeah, those were some really, really cool places that we were running through. Like, it was just like, and it kept changing. I mean, one of my I don't know. I guess it probably wasn't it definitely wasn't my favorite at the time, but it's one that I look back on and I'm just like, wow, like that was so cool that we did this. Was like, there was just part of the trail. It was like mile 88 or 89. It was probably half a mile where the trail just like dropped down into the stream. And then it was like, the flags were just hung above the stream for like half a mile. And you're like, what? Like, I'm supposed to walk through this? Like, it was definitely not my favorite part of the race in it, but looking back on it, that was definitely a super memorable part. But yeah, I mean, I got to run 40 miles or so with a good buddy of mine, Russell. And then the last 60 miles or so was just by myself. And it was super hard, but it was just like I learned so much about myself and about running 100-milers, and just found this really weird sense of I think like the like self-preservation like kicked in, and I was really alert like the whole time. I didn't really have a whole lot of mental fog that I typically have in hundreds, where I've got a lot of people around me helping me.
Yep.
So I think it was like, I think there was some sort of survival skill that kicked in there, and
that's super cool. I mean,
and my wife told me afterwards, like it was like the few days after, I was actually kind of more of a mess than I normally am after a 100-miler. So I think there was a lot of stuff going on. Like during the race, I was definitely in some sort of survival mode, much more than I normally am. Because afterwards, like I just crashed for like 4 or 5 days. And like, it was mentally hard.
For your 100-miler in May, I assume that you're not going to do that self-supported. I know that you did really well on a self-supported like 100-miler, and I know that it was like, I know you've talked about this in other videos where you've said like, you know, you're getting all this stuff figured out, and you feel much more confident now, you know, with what you need. Do you feel like you'll still use support a little bit within, you know, some of these races in the future?
Yeah, I feel like, I think there's certain races that would be really fun to do self-supported, and I'll definitely do them again. But the Cruel Jewel coming up in May is going to be so stinking hard that like, I'm just
33,000 feet of elevation climb.
Yeah. Like I'm going to have people around me, just to make sure that I'm not like dead basically. So yeah, I'm definitely hoping to have a pacer or two and a crew of some kind, and a driver for after the race.
Yeah.
But yeah. Cool. Yeah, man. But that's just kind of like how I structure, like a lot of it is just like working through seasons of training, and then trying to give like some training tips and advice. Like I used to do a lot more, like I had a coaching series that I put out, 7 or 8 videos. I don't know if I'll ever get back into that. I would love to. Like the first half of this year was kind of messed up with YouTube, because I was just spending 30 hours a week on this documentary series, and then getting back into it and getting right into a race and everything. So I'm really excited for YouTube, just to really just like focus on that for a while.
I know. I was actually like, so my work, I do contract work for, you know, like you could guess the company that I work for. It's a very swooshy company in the Pacific Northwest, right?
Yeah.
But I am dying for like work to slow down, because I want to put more effort into the channel, because I think it's fun. I really enjoy doing it. And that's why I encourage more people to do the same thing. Cause I mean, it's strangely addictive, especially when you're close to major milestones. Like you're about to hit 10,000. Like I'm super pumped for you to hit that milestone. And I know that, you know, the one thing that we haven't mentioned is how exponential a lot of this stuff is. It's like very hard to get 100 followers, right? Or 100 subscribers. Yeah. Then all of a sudden you're at like at 1,000, right? And so it's like, you know, I would say like, it's really neat to see you hit 10,000, because I know that like 20,000 is going to be, you know, 3 months later or whatever it is. Like, it's super exciting for me to see how successful your channel is doing. I think it helps that you're very, very good at this stuff. But it's really nice to see the numbers reflect that. Right. So
thanks, man. Yeah. And yeah, like exactly like what you said, like the first, I mean, for me, like I never had any type of viral videos or breakout videos. It was all like, it was a slow build, and I actually am really happy about that. I'm really proud of that. Not, you know, like I'm happy that my, like, the community that I've built is a community that is very engaging. Like, people comment, like, I love getting in the comments and talking to people. We just created a Discord server. And it's been awesome. Like, in the first like day, like 100 people signed up, and then a couple days later there was 200 people, and like, it's just, it's awesome. I mean, people are in it right now, just like asking like training questions, talking about gear, talking about running, like, just, I mean, it's such a cool community, and like, I'm really like happy with how it's gone.
And you, I mean, like, it's amazing. This is another reason for people to seriously start like a YouTube channel. It's like, the people that you meet are amazing people. The people that will watch your stuff, these are like great humans. And you know, you always fear that you're going to have some sort of troll, like, you know, saying horrible things or whatever, and that may come and go, but surprisingly, like, not that much. Like, for the most part, like, these are amazing individuals, like, watching your content, and like, I really consider a lot of them like good friends. So it's really rewarding, I think, you know, starting a YouTube channel. Oh,
totally. I agree with you, man. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on this channel, and just doing this live show. I think I got through maybe like half the questions, so I'll definitely have to have you on again, sometime in the future.
Like, that I want to ask you. So
nice. Well, we should like go back and forth. I
need to like learn how to do a live stream, and you can come on my channel.
You're doing it right now.
Well, it's something that I've thought of, like, okay, maybe I could have like a, you know, fireside chat or something with, you know, like my little group of people that, you know, but someday I'll figure that out. It's different, and it's super neat, man. I really appreciate that you were, you know, even considering, you know, having me on your show, because it's definitely a very nice channel.
Awesome. Well, thanks, man. I think that's like this has just been so cool. Like, doing these live shows and having people on, you know, it's something that I didn't ever really consider before everything happened this year and everything started locking down, and we couldn't talk to people and we couldn't go see people. And I think just like connecting like this, like over a video chat, it's not weird anymore. Like, it used to be kind of weird. It used to be kind of like, oh, that podcast was recorded remotely. Like, I'd rather listen to one where it was the people were in the same room, but it's like, it's not weird anymore. And like, I just think it's like, it's been so fun and so rewarding, like just getting to meet people, and just super stoked to have you on. So thanks, man. I mean, where can people find you? I mean, I've got your YouTube link down below, but like, do you have a favorite social media that you get on?
You know, I like to post pictures to Instagram. I was posting a lot of like drone photography, but I kind of decided I should move, like, I should separate like triathlon stuff from drone photography stuff. But it's Matt_LeGrand. You know, that's on Instagram. You can find me there, and that's a great spot. But if you search for me, you know, you can find me on Facebook or Instagram, or you know, YouTube is definitely the best place, and I'm active there for sure. There is another Matt LeGrand, and he's like, this is like, I have a lot of friends that give me a hard time about this. He is kind of like a teen heartthrob kind of singer. So nice. You have two Matt LeGrands to choose from, and I suggest that you choose both, because he will like sing with his shirt off on the beach to girls, and he's actually pretty good. But it's I don't subscribe to him, but I think that everyone else should. But while you're subscribing to people, definitely consider my channel as well. So triathlon and boy band singing.
There we go. I mean, you can't get much better than that. So yeah. All right, man. We're gonna end this. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you to everyone that is watching this on replay or listening to the podcast. It's just like so fun. Like, definitely comment on the video, ask more questions, follow Matt, subscribe to his channel, ask him questions. Just like, I'm just so happy that we got to do this finally. So thanks for coming on, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. I will see you later, and I'll check you guys later too that are watching. Thanks.